Hello and welcome to the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast made for fans by fans and where the content is absolutely free. We're coming to you live tonight, the day after Rangers extended their lead at the top of the Scottish Premiership table to 19 points, following a 1-0 victory over Celtic at Ibrox. We will look at the game, as well as other goings on, another busy few days for the club. If you haven't already, please share the podcast where you can and give us a like on our social media platforms. Joining me, David Wren, your host tonight, to go through all that that happened yesterday. Are two of my oldest Gersnet friends, and by that, of course, I mean their age. So it's Colin Armstrong and John McCallum. Colin, Happy New Year. It's a very happy start to the year. And I had a wee gag lined up about you sobering up, you know, but I know that you didn't drink yesterday because you're a bag of nerves. So
I didn't have a drink through the game. The nerves crippled me yesterday. I went out for a walk before the game for an hour to try and walk them out me, get the nerves out me, but it just made it worse. I just convinced myself that Bobby Madden was going to do us over. He was going to do a number on us. The whole game, it is literally the worst I've felt, the worst nerves I've felt for a game for a long, long time. And even when we won it, I wasn't as sort of joyful as I normally am when we beat them. It just felt more like relief. I just think there was so much riding on it yesterday that I just couldn't enjoy it. So, but I'm enjoying it now. So, having a wee beer and looking forward to chatting about it tonight. And Happy New Year, David.
John, Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for coming back on the podcast, and first time on the camera, so it's good to see you've get out your house coat this time of night. So no, that's difficult for you.
You'll need to keep prodding me to keep me awake, David. Play loud music every now and then. Couldn't help but notice you're drinking blue WKD. Colin's on an exotic beer, and I know a big mug of tea to try and keep me awake.
You're saying it's tea, John, but we know it's something else.
It's an Ovaltine. Yes, good New Year to you. Many more of them. It's been a good start. Let's hope it continues in the same vein.
Indeed. I think we'll end up talking about this game quite a lot, Colin, as the night goes on. It's one of those games where, we spoke about the podcast last week. Sometimes you come on, you just whiz through an agenda and it's all fine. But I think with this game, there's quite a lot out with the actual game itself. And it's a weird one because you're looking at it, in the context of what it means for us as a club and our team. But really the actual game itself, even watching it in Sportscene again last night, it was a very poor game, especially from the Rangers' point of view. And I think, I put in the agenda that I sent out to you earlier, arguably the worst half of football I've seen under Gerrard in that first half yesterday. I think it was certainly up there in terms of just nothing was happening for us. And, I don't know how you felt going into half time, but I was thinking within the first 10, 15 minutes, if we get to half time 0-0 here, we'll be doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched the game, I've watched the highlights a couple of times since, and don't get me wrong, I think you're right, Rangers didn't play well at all, especially in the first half. We just could not get out, and I wasn't quite sure what Steven Gerrard was trying, what the plan was. It seemed to be we were conceding ground. I kind of took the opinion about halfway through the half that we were sitting off them rather than, a high press to try and pull them out, to try and create space for Kent to run in behind. And it wasn't working. If that was the plan, it wasn't working. Celtic played really well. I don't think they played as well as people are making out, though. I saw a really good tweet today from a Celtic fan who pointed out that the save from Alan McGregor, that wonder save for Griffiths, was their last shot on target in the game. So, they had that really good chance early on with Edward when he got put through. Another good save for McGregor. I think Colin McGregor had a good effort that just went wide of the post, and then obviously Griffiths had that shot. And after that, it's all sort of long range stuff. There's, I can't really think of McGregor having a save to make in the second half. What's his name? Balogun made a good challenge on Edward in the second half when it looked like he was through. So I don't think Celtic were as dominant as people are making out. I think it was a poor first half from Rangers. I think the second half, I thought it was kind of eachy peachy, and I agree with you. I don't think it was a great game of football, and the red card changed the game. But I mean, it was a red card. I know we'll talk about it later, but it was a red card. But no, not the greatest performance of Rangers. I think I've again, looking at some of the stuff online today, some of the comments on Twitter and forums and stuff like that. I'm seeing an opinion that Rangers have came through a heavy schedule, and I think it's starting to show a wee bit. We're not playing with the same tempo, and there's not the same sort of movement that was happening in the early part of the season. So we're moving into a period where I think all through January we've only got one game a week, and I think the players could do with that. I think maybe a wee extended period between each game just to freshen the legs up again because obviously the Europa League stuff starts again in February. But at the end of the day, regardless of the performance, it's about the result. And before Steven Gerrard arrived, and maybe even a wee bit in his first year or 18 months, that was probably a game that we would have lost yesterday. And it just shows that we spoke about it in the show before, when it doesn't go well for you and you're not playing well, you just need to find a way of winning the game. And that's what we've done yesterday. I think that's the biggest example yet from this Rangers team, that when we're not playing well, we can find a way to win, and we done it yesterday.
John, as I said there, in terms of the first half performance, it was a strange one. I mean, you look at the balance of the midfield in terms of, Davis and Kamara play too. Have been two players who've been excellent, and I think they were excellent yesterday actually. But Aribo came into that midfield three, and he's actually a player that I love. I think he's a fantastic player, especially when you look at the context of how we signed him. But he was one yesterday that every time he got the ball, I felt it just wasn't happening. And then the problem with that is when you don't have Ryan Jack or Scott Arfield, and that's who you're playing instead. He's not quite covering as much ground as they guys would, and I think that was possibly one of the things that was causing us problems in that first half.
Yeah, I mean, I think like every Rangers supporter, I was, at half time you were thinking, when are we going to start? When are we turning up? When are we going to start playing? But as Colin said, with 24 hours to actually analyze, because the game itself, you have such a mixture of emotions during a Rangers Celtic game. You've seen me, as yesterday, one of my sons turned around and said, "Did someone score?" And I said, "No, it was just a misplaced pass," but my reaction to it, and the games are like that. And with 24 hours, I actually think that the first half, firstly, I think you have to give some credit to Celtic. I think they had done their homework. They came out with a game plan, and had they managed to get a goal in the first kind of 20 minutes, then I think it could have been a very different game. So give them a little credit there. They are the champions. They do still have some decent players. Let's not just write them off. They do still have some decent players. And they gave us a game yesterday, and they took the game to us. I thought the first half, our defence actually played well. Our goalkeeper was outstanding. Our defence actually played quite well. And I thought the two sitting midfielders played quite well. The problem we had was the four in front of them, and I'm including Aribo in that, they just couldn't keep the ball. Every time the ball went forward, it came straight back to us. And that was different from pretty much every game I've seen us play this season, David. That none have been, Kent couldn't, even Morelos, and for all the criticism of Morelos' goal scoring this year, he's a guy who still wins you free kicks. He draws in a foul. He wasn't even managing to do that. Roof, it wasn't a surprise he had taken off at half time. I know there's been talk that maybe he's got a knock, but I think it was the right decision, and it proved to be the right decision. So it was frustrating from that perspective, and I agree with you. I didn't think Aribo none of them had a great first half in terms of the first four, the top four. But if you watch the game back, the number of times that we win the ball in midfield and we have to pass it back. We have to turn around and we pass it back. And Celtic were working really hard. They were closing down the space. They were doing to us what we've done to teams this season. And I think what's also interesting, and we'll never know because of the sending off, but it looked to me in the second half that we were starting to get on top. That when the sending off came, we were starting to get on top. Celtic were tiring. They couldn't keep up that level of intensity the whole match. They needed to get a goal in the first half. They didn't get it. And actually, I felt, as in the second half, I felt kind of 10 minutes into the second half, I started to relax. I started to feel, no, now this is our game. Now we are now starting to control this game. We're now starting to create chances. And I think as the game went on, there was no doubt about that. There was only going to be one winner after we scored. I didn't feel in any way that Celtic were going to come back from that. And it's an interesting thing because our team goes out to 10 men. That sometimes galvanises them. Sometimes there's this feeling of, they feel hard done by, even if it's, in this case, it certainly was a justifiable sending off. But sometimes that galvanises. Sometimes 10 men can be almost harder to play against. But I didn't think it galvanised Celtic. I actually thought the opposite. I thought it took something from them. So, I think having had 24 hours to digest it and look back, our forward line just did not function in the first half. And I think that's what causes our problems. But actually, the defence played well. Goalkeeper had an outstanding game. And I actually thought Davis and Kamara were doing their best. They just couldn't find a forward pass.
Yeah, interestingly, you make a good point there about the galvanising teams, because actually tonight Sky had, before the darts came on, they showed a game from, I think it was 2018. It was against Murty's Rangers, and they went down to 10 men, and then they eventually scored the winner at Ibrox 3-2. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right there, and I think it's possibly been a case that, as you say, we were coming into the game a wee bit, because that sending off, and we'll come on to that, but that sending off doesn't really happen if we're not finding our way into the game, because the way it happened, Tavernier actually got a ball up the pitch. So Colin, just on another point to do with the first half, it actually reminded me a lot of the Standard Liège game at Ibrox, in the sense that they pressed us really high up the pitch, and you felt at times like we didn't really know how to deal with that, because it hadn't happened really up until that point. And yesterday really reminded me of that game, but then we found a way that night, and I think we just about found a way yesterday as well.
Yeah, and I think, earlier in the season we did show, I think in the Galatasaray game especially, I thought they pressed quite high at times, but we were able at that stage in the season to get past the first press. We were really good. I think it's the second goal against Galatasaray. It starts from McGregor, goes to goals and out to Tav, and the move all the way up is fantastic. I think there was more than one example in the early part of the season when we were very good at passing our way through that high press. As I said earlier on, I think that zip and tempo that we had at the early part has dropped a wee bit. And I think, I saw something today saying, we've played 33, 34 games already. So that's kind of got to be expected. And you can't play to your absolute best every single week. That's how teams win titles. It's not the games when they're at the best version of themselves, playing the best football that they're capable of. It's when they're having a bad day and they still find a way to get the 3 points. So, that sort of early season form has definitely faded away. We don't look the same sort of team we were at that stage, but we're still winning. We're still finding a way to beat teams. So that kind of gives me confidence, because I was always worried that, there was maybe a wee bit Warburton's team about Steven Gerrard's team now. If plan A goes tits up, there is no plan B. If we can't do plan A to our best sort of the best possible way, then we're going to struggle. And it's not really like that. And I think John makes a good point. Defensively, we're still looking solid. And, when you think back of all the great Rangers teams that have won titles and cups and all the rest of it, that's a big part of it. We don't just go out and batter teams every week. There's, I remember the 92-93 season in that Champions League. The majority of the stuff was not the majority, but a good part of it was stuff that Andy Gorham done, that John Brown done, that Richard Gough done, that Dave McPherson done. It wasn't all about Ali McCoist and Mark Hateley and the guys up front. We had to dig out results. We had to fight to get those results. And we're showing that. We're defending well. We've only conceded, I think it's 5 league goals to this point of the season. So yeah, that sort of, early sort of high tempo game that we had at the early part of the season seems to have disappeared a wee bit. But I'm getting confidence for the fact that despite the fact that that's went, we're still getting results. And I think it will come back. Once we get through sort of January, February time, and I think, if things go to plan and we're getting closer and closer to the finishing line, I think the confidence will come back. And, I think maybe also playing in Europe will help as well, because I think when you're playing a higher level of team, it brings out a higher level of performance from your own team. So, Yeah, I'm delighted with how things are going, David. You know, we're not playing supremely well at the moment, but we're still winning, and we're 19 points clear. Okay, they've got 3 games in hand, but if you'd offered this to us in July, August time, you know, you would have or the team China for this sort of position that we're in at the moment. So, yeah, I'm happy. As I say, we're not as fluent as we were in the early part of the season, but I'm still very happy with how the team are performing.
Just them you on that point, Colin. You know, as John said, it wasn't working. We made the change at half time, but you know, there's no doubt Hadji has come into his own the past few weeks. He's brought a different dimension to the team. It's been good to introduce someone like him, you know, at this stage of the season, because at the start he was struggling a wee bit, and I think he came on, and even just that sort of taking it in the half turn and having a short goal, which went wide of the post, but it gave us a wee bit of thinking.
Yeah.
You know, we might be able to get back into this game, because at that point you were sort of wondering how we would, but he made a really positive difference.
Yeah, I mean, I was a wee bit surprised with the substitution, honestly. I expected a change at half time, but you know, given the goal scoring form that Roof's been in, I was a wee bit surprised that he was the one that went. I know he didn't play particularly well, but I don't think any of them were. So I was a wee bit surprised, but there's no doubt, you know, it worked. You know what I mean? He introduced something different. And I think that shows that, you know, Gerrard has got the squad that he wants now. You know what I mean? There's players that sit out for a wee period. And I think we spoke earlier on about Scott Arfield, how it looked like, you know, the Rangers had recruited well enough to maybe put him in a position where, you know, he was going to be sitting on the bench most weeks. And then he got his opportunity against Dundee United, came in, played supremely well, and then held down a jersey. And then that's forcing other people to sort of up their game to get back in the starting 11. And Hadji's now, it seems like he's the latest one. You know, he was sort of in the starting team in the early part of the season. His form's dipped. You know, he's been taken out, and therefore he's having to fight to get back in. So that, if you're a player with something about you, that inspires you. That brings the best out of you. And I think that's what Gerrard has wanted from day one. You know, he talks about this, you know, 2 players for each position. So if one pops out, the other one's fighting to get back in, you know, and it just everybody inspires everybody else to reach a sort of higher level. So, you know, he wasn't playing particularly well, Hadji. I think he came out at the right time. I think Gerrard made the right decision to take him out of the team. But it's worked. You know, he's come in over the last 2, 3, 4 games and made the difference, chipped in with a couple of goals, and he certainly made the difference yesterday. As you say, he was on the park for 2 or 3 minutes. He's dropped the shoulder, cut inside, got a shot away and goal. And straight away, it set a different tone. You know, we'd been on the back foot for the whole sort of first half, really. And that just changed the tone of the game a wee bit. And yeah, he made a great contribution. Should have scored, though. That Tav free kick with a header, he should have scored. But other than that, yeah, good contribution.
John, onto the contentious issue of the red card. Well, contentious in one man's mind, but I can't. I think actually, you know, the more you watch it, the more obvious it is. But you know, I think the way that Beaton takes Morelos down is just madness in itself. And when you're Bobby Madden, you're looking at that play as a whole. I can't see anything other than a red card. And seeing the referee runs over and is as quick as that with a red card, you know that it must have been clear on the pitch as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing contentious about it. It's absolutely it's one of those ones they show in referee school. That's the video they show you for this is a red card. You know, it was absolutely. I mean, he rugby tackled him. It was nonsense. You know, let's deal with Lennon. Lennon is deflecting. Okay, you know, Lennon is coming out after that game and he's finding a scapegoat, which is, you know, day one in manager school. So, you know, he's deflecting. He's looking for someone to put the blame. A number of Celtic supporters and a number of the media have gone down that route as well. But let's be under no illusions that is in any way contentious. You know, Morelos is away. Whether Morelos will score or not is irrelevant. It's a goal-scoring opportunity. Morelos is going through on goal. It was, you know, to have fouled him so blatantly, he gave him, you know, if he'd done a kind of mock stumble and kind of fallen into him or something, he might have got away with it. But he's never getting away with putting his arms around him and just hauling him to the ground. So, you know, no, there's nothing contentious about it. You know, Morelos actually isn't getting enough credit for completely doing him. I mean, he just left him for dead. There's no way the other centre half was going to give over. Morelos is getting a shot in, or another Rangers player is going to manage to cover some ground and he's going to knock it across the box stump. But either way, it's a goal scoring opportunity. It's a clear red card.
I think what would probably be more contentious was the one a few minutes later, Shane Duffy tackle on Ryan Kent, because to me, I don't know the rules inside out, but there was no real intent to play the ball there. It was
a dangerous tackle as well.
It was a very dangerous tackle, and I think Duffy to me looks like a guy, and I have no interest in Celtic players, but from what I've seen, he looks like a guy who's not comfortable. He's not comfortable playing for Celtic. He's not comfortable coming on in a game like that. And it looked to me like just a guy that thought, right, if I take him out, maybe I'll get some, social media hype. And I don't know, it was very, very dangerous tackle.
And the guy, is it Sorrow, a player I'll be honest, completely unaware of until yesterday. It looked like he could be, he could be something for them, but the guy was on 3 or 4 fouls, which you'd something not meant to do just now. I think we missed yesterday. I think Rangers missed yesterday. Colin and I have spoken about this before, and the other way. Rangers missed the crowd yesterday. 50,000 Rangers supporters yesterday, and I don't think that first half would have gone the way it did. I think we would have been woken from our stupor after 10, 15 minutes if the crowd had been there yesterday. I also think that the Duffy tackle, with 50,000 guys up in arms, I do think that influences referees. And whatever referees say, I do think it influences them. And I think the guy Sorrow would have definitely picked up a booking long before he did in the first half, because it was continuous foul. It was, none of them were hurting anybody, but it was continuous professional foul, and he would have picked up a booking. So I actually think Celtic were lucky yesterday with the referee. Duffy could easily have been off, and I think had there been a crowd in, he would have been off. And I think the guy Sorrow would have picked up a booking a lot earlier than they did. And then who knows? Who knows? That changes the game if their kind of main midfield guy can no longer make tackles.
Yeah, this crowd thing's turned into a proper Gersnet roundabout, isn't it? It goes from we don't need the crowds to we should have had the crowds. We need the crowds. It's a funny one actually. It's a funny debate to have, because you can really go for it game by game, can't you? And look at
it's game by game.
Yeah, I think it is game by game. The opposition. I think, see the Livingston game when we drew 0-0. I think the next game at Ibrox could have been bad if the crowd were in and things started getting a wee bit tetchy. But I agree with John yesterday. That's the sort of game where the crowd is a big benefactor and helps us.
Well, the goal came shortly after that sending off, and it was a scrappy goal, but it felt a bit like that old the old Moedu last minute goal at Ibrox. It had that sort of feel about it. And I think that's what was always going to take, Colin. Really, something that was just going off, somebody's arse or whatever, just to get it in the net.
Doesn't matter how they go in, they all count, David. Do you know what I mean? So, I actually didn't really see how the ball went into the net. I saw the ball going into the box, and then a few players running away celebrating. I had to watch the replay to sort of work out how it went in. So it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? And again, that's how leagues are won. Those kind of goals, the nip and tuck games, and you just scrap it by it going in off someone's shoulder. I felt a wee bit for Morelos. If it was going a yard the other way, he'd lost his man and had an open goal and would have finally broken his duck against them. But at the end of the day, as long as it went in, that's the main thing. And I'll take it all day long. I don't care how they go in, David, especially against them, as long as they go in. Yeah,
well, I had an extremely depressing moment during the build up to the goal where my Now TV login had broke down on my laptop, so then I had to switch to the phone, and the score alert came up as Tavernier lined up to take the corner. But then it went away and I didn't see what it was, but I sort of saw what it was, and then the next thing you know, so I sort of knew before it went in. But it was, that's been my life this season, because I'm always on a team. So it's just, it's been an absolute nightmare. But no, it was good, and I think even after that, you always can expect, John, for something to happen to us, even now when we're 19 points clear. And I've got a feeling. I've always got a feeling when Celtic bring on, the likes of Rogic, you're always a bit like, he could hurt us potentially, but it never really came, and it never, as you said earlier, it never really looked like coming.
No, I thought my most comfortable was the last 20 minutes. And you look at our bench yesterday, and you look at their bench yesterday, and you look at our substitutions and their substitutions. Our substitutions strengthened us, and their substitutions weakened them. Again, something we have touched on in the past, our recruitment over the last 3 transfer windows has been very, very good, and their recruitment has been criminal. And somehow they've gone from having, £30 million of Champions League money and a championship winning team to having a team just now that, their first choice 11 will give us a game. But once they start making substitutions, the guy bit on, the guy that gets sent off, I don't actually think he is a centre half, is he? I think he was getting kind of shoehorned in because they didn't have any other centre halves. And for a team that had the advantages, even 12 months ago, for a team that had the advantages, both financial and both in terms of the squad that they'd built up, for them to have found themselves in that position 12 months later, that is really quite surprising. But more importantly, David, is what we've done. And I thought as soon as we scored, Gerrard looked at the bench and just killed the game. Davis he dictated the tempo after that, slowed the game right down. And we made substitutions at the right time. And I've been critical this season because I don't always think we've made substitutions at the right time. I think this year we did. We made substitutions at the right time. We slowed the game down. We controlled it after that. And I know what you're saying. You're never comfortable. 5-0 up, you're not comfortable against Celtic. But the most comfortable I felt in the match was the last 20 minutes. Didn't see them score.
I think if you're a Rangers fan, Hibs fan, Aberdeen fan, Hearts fan, whatever, 1-0 up against Celtic and they take off Griffiths, well, albeit he wasn't, it was 0-0 when he went off. They take off Griffiths, then they take off Christie, and they bring on Brown, and they bring on the other guy, whatever his name was, El Mohammed, I think. I found that, that gave me a lot of confidence when Brown came on. I know that sounds ridiculous.
I thought Brown was on. I thought Brown was on to get one of us sent off.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that was his instruction. Yeah. Go on there and get one of them sent off, even the numbers. That's what I think he was there to do.
But see, even if you're a Celtic fan watching that, and obviously, I'm not too concerned about that now, but, it just seems strange to me. It'd be like us taking off an attacking player and bringing on like Zungu 1-0 down. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And I think at that point, that was when I sort of settled and thought, you know what? That's not a substitution to change your game.
But as Colin said, David, I think they ran out of steam. I think they couldn't keep the pace up that they had in the first half. I think that's why Griffiths was coming off. I think, we've all seen the pictures of Griffiths. Griffiths does not look fit. Griffiths is carrying weight. I mean, they slag Morelos, but Griffiths is carrying weight. I don't think Griffiths can play 90 minutes. And I think that's why they took him off, and they don't have anyone to replace him with, which is great. All power to us.
Yeah. Colin, just before we go on to other things, but in terms of yesterday's game, was there anything in that performance or that overall sort of the past few games, I suppose, that have concerned you in the context of what's going to be a difficult, few games for us?
Yeah, I do think we're in for a difficult January. We've got Pittodrie next week, Easter Road and Fir Park, and obviously they've just got rid of Stephen Robinson, so you might have the old, reaction to whoever's coming in and taking the job. So yeah, I do think we have a tricky January. Yeah, when your form dips, you do get concerned. You know what I mean? But we couldn't be in a better place to take a dip in form. We're 19 points clear. Again, I think I read today that it's 12 wins until we can win the title. So I'm still really cautious about saying that this is over. I don't think it is. I would rather we maintain the sort of mentality that we've got now, just keep going, and it's not done until it's done. But when I read that 12 wins and we win the title, that takes us into March and we could win the title. You know what I mean? So we're in a good place to take a couple of hits along the road. We've not lost a game in the league yet. But if Gerrard had done this in the first season, I would probably be more confident that because of the last 2 seasons, we've faded after the winter break. January's been a bit of a shitty month for us, and then we've struggled after that. That's got the sort of paranoia in my mind that, we're not there yet. We need to just maintain the standards that we've got now and maintain that mentality about just turning up, doing the job and getting the 3 points and coming away. So a lot of football to be played. We've not won the league. There's a lot of football to be played, but we are 19 points clear after 21 games or something like that, 22 games. Again, what I said, I like what I said at the start. If you'd offered us this in July, August, we would have taken it without any question. So I think there'll be bumps in the road. I think I can't see us going the next sort of 12 games without dropping points at somewhere. But not because, I'm fearful of the team, just by the law of averages. We've won 14 on the trot now. I would suspect there's more wins behind us in a row than there are in front of us. I actually think we might get a draw on Sunday, but I mean, a draw at Pittodrie is not a bad thing. So yeah, the drop in form is a little bit worrying, but we're still winning, and we've got a good cushion there to just, take a wee done there. And another thing is, I don't trust Celtic to go on the sort of required run that they would need to put together to catch us. So it's not done, but I'm quietly confident that we have the players, we have the management team, and we have the mentality. The mentality this season seems totally different. I mean, the way Gerrard celebrated when the final whistle went yesterday, I think is key, because this time last year at Celtic Park, he's up at the camera. He's obviously, the fans make a difference, but he's up at the camera. He's celebrating, cuddling with the players. Yesterday, he just turned, fist pumps with Neil Lennon and his bench and away, and no sort of emotion, no sort of this is a big win. Just that's the 3 points. We go to the next game. So I think the mentality in this squad has changed. I think we have more strength and depth in the squad. So I think we're better prepared to take the inevitable dunce between now and May.
Well, they play Hibs and then Livingston back to back, away and at home, which,
yeah,
the form Livingston in serious form, by the way. Yesterday, I saw their game last night. They're a decent side, so not an easy run of fixtures either. And
the pressure as well. I mean, John Hartson was blabbing last week about all the pressures on Rangers. The pressure on Celtic going into these 3 games in hand, it's incredible, because they don't even need to get beat. They just need to drop points, and that even more pressure seeped in them. So, but it's not done. It's certainly not done, and I'll not be celebrating anything until we're over the line.
I think the best comparison was the one you made a few weeks ago. It's a bit like Liverpool last season in the Premier League. Man City. That's quite a good comparison. It always just seemed to be, and even everyone was saying, "Oh, Liverpool haven't won it yet, not won it yet." But then it just kept getting more and more, and I think that's the attitude we'll have to take. But John, just before we move on from yesterday's game, I think we'll spend a bit of time praising who turned out to be the man of the match, Alan McGregor. Now,
I thought you were going to say Bobby Madden there.
I'm not
Brother Madden.
I'm not big on the career of Andy Gorham, because when he was at his pomp, I wasn't really paying much attention to Rangers.
Were you a Celtic fan then, David?
No. I was in nappies back then, John, as you well know. But my first real goalie that I saw at Rangers was Stefan Klos, and I couldn't see past Stefan Klos as just my hero when I was younger. But McGregor was the one as I got older, and obviously now, and it's really, I find it hard to pick a winner out of those two in terms of Klos and McGregor. But you two will have much more of an idea about Gorham. And I know Ian Crocker Andy Walker asked Ali McCoist, and he was struggling yesterday, who was better too. But in terms of, what McGregor's achieved and what he's still managing to do, 38, 39, it's quite an incredible run he's had.
Yeah. I mean, do you know who might prove to be the best signing of the summer? John McLaughlin. Because I think that's pushed McGregor on to another level again. McGregor this season, McLaughlin's come in this season 2 or 3 times, and you've looked and you've thought, this guy's great. this is, wouldn't have had any qualms if he'd kept the jersey. And then when McGregor's got his chance, McGregor has just proved to be the best goalkeeper in the country. And you have to say that's great management. Colin and I had a chat about McGregor on the pod about a month ago, and you run out of superlatives because every time he's called upon, he delivers. There was the spectacular save yesterday, the one kind of tipping it onto the post. But actually, I thought the save at the very start of the game was better because chance of getting caught unawares there. So 400 games says all you need to know about McGregor, and at his age, you can't help but feel he should be losing some of the agility. He should be losing some of the desire even. And that all still seems to be there. And that's enormous credit to him, and that's enormous credit to the people who work with him. In terms of comparisons, it's difficult to make a comparison. He's more like Klos than Gorham. Gorham was a very different type of goalkeeper. Gorham was a huge character. He was a big presence. I think Malcolm McCoy used to call him the flying pig because he didn't look like an athlete. Let's say that. He didn't resemble your. I'm not sure Gorham would have got into this Cunt Rangers team. I'm not sure he was the right fit for this Cunt Rangers team, but he was the right fit for that Rangers team. And he pulled off countless times. He pulled off saves. The game against, if you ever get a chance to watch the game against Leeds at Ellen Road, the European Cup game, Gorham in that game was astonishing. And the number of times he did it in big games against Celtic, cup finals, cup semi-finals, where he pulled off a save. Again, we spoke about this a wee while ago, and you'll have seen this on YouTube or whatever. He pulled off a save once from Van Hooijdonk, and I think it was Colin said himself. He said the ball was in. When you're watching football, you see the angles. It all happens in front of you. Ball's in, and somehow or other it wasn't. Somehow or other he stopped it. And to this day, I still don't know how he did it. So we have been lucky. I first started watching Rangers. As I said, it was a while ago, and Peter McCloy was still on the books. I started watching Rangers. Nicky Walker was the first choice. So I've been lucky. I've seen Chris Woods. Saw Chris Woods come in, and Chris Woods set a new standard of goalkeeper. Andy Gorham, I think, went up a level. Klos came in and made you forget about Gorham. McGregor has come in and over two spells. If I'm pushed, I'd say that McGregor, I think, is the best of those four. I think he has done it consistently. Klos was immaculate, but Klos towards the end wasn't good with his feet. Klos was a great shot stopper. Again, a commanding presence, but he actually wasn't very good with his feet. That's one of the things that's impressed me this year about McGregor in particular, is his distribution has improved. He's actually got better from that perspective. He's a goalkeeper that's gone through that whole change of what a goalkeeper has to do. Gorham was a goalkeeper at a time when goalkeepers just basically had to make saves. McGregor isn't. McGregor's so much of what goalkeepers do now is start the next move. Is this whole talk of transitions and moving things quickly. And McGregor is good at that, as well as just pulling off, doing nothing for a whole match and then just pulling off a save. So, people will have different views. It's difficult to make that comparison, but I actually think he is of them all. I think he is the best, and the fact he's still doing it is fantastic. I think he's got a contract this summer, is he not?
Yeah, I think he might be. But I've noticed Colin fidgeting because this sort of question says his bread and butter. This sort of Gorham McGregor thing. I could see his finger. His finger was hovering over that.
How do I mute him?
Hey, Colin, I'll let you have your.
I've just got an itch. I'm just sitting here itching. It's a nervous hive kind of itch. I would agree with John. I think McGregor's done it consistently over a longer period. I think Gorham. I agree with him. That night at Ellen Road was a masterclass, and it was almost like a personal duel between him and Eric Cantona, and it was just sublime to watch. And I mean, it was so nerve-wracking as well watching it live. It was just, you only really enjoyed it watching it, re-watching it after the actual event. During it, it was just so nerve-wracking. But Gorham was quite injury-prone, and he didn't look after himself, I don't think, in the best possible way. I was in the Loudon Tavern when it was the old one that was on Duke Street. I was going to a cup final at Celtic Park. Rangers were playing St Johnstone in Advocates' first season. We won 2-1. So me and a couple of mates were in the Loudon bar in Duke Street, and Gorham came in, and he didn't have a club at the time. And he came in, and he had his two front teeth were missing. He was the size of a house. His hair was all sort of long and curly and kind of greasy looking. And I turned to my mate and I was like, Advocate must have just taken one look at that guy and went, get him he is not my goalkeeper, So there was that aspect to Gorham. He was a fantastic goalkeeper, but he didn't look after himself in the best possible way. McGregor's a bit of a boy at times, but I think he's a more dedicated professional in that front and a more dedicated athlete. And you're seeing that because he's still doing it at 38, 39. So yeah, I think 400 appearances and the sort of the level of performance that he's maintained over those, I think he's the best in my lifetime. Just beats Jim Stewart.
Just before we move on from McGregor, I'd quite like both your takes on this. Over the past 3 years under Gerrard have been better, but I think that period between 2012 and 2017-18, I was always concerned about the leaders in the dressing room and the people who are holding the standards of the club and holding the standards of the team when things weren't going well. And since he came back and Davis also came back, I've a bit more, I feel like they're the ones in the dressing room that will be at least letting the players know what it means, to us, and also about the standards that need to be set. And when we aren't performing, they're the ones that are leading, the reasons why, and they'd be the ones that are telling the players why. And I always feel a bit more content that there's people in the dressing room like that are going to understand the club and where we should be. I found McGregor's interview after the game yesterday quite interesting, John, in the sense that he wasn't praising the team massively, and he was making clear how poor we'd been in the first half, and he was making it clear on the pitch as well. How do you feel about that? Because I know it's sort of long-winded there, but I always felt that there wasn't quite as many people that understood the club. But now to have him and Davis in there, especially two guys that have had great success with us, as well as guys like Jermaine Defoe, who may not know a lot about Rangers, or maybe do now, but certainly know about playing top-level football.
Yeah, I mean, the culture in the dressing room is vital. And making so much of football, so much of all sport at that level, I think, is 90% in the head. Most of these guys will be getting trained to a high level. Have all sorts of things at their disposal that can improve them. It's their mentality after that. It's do they choose to take that on? We spoke earlier on about Celtic going down to 10 men and not galvanising them. And I think the culture at that club is different. And I don't know if we're going to talk about the photographs that have appeared tonight about them all sitting around boozing in Dubai. I mean, I can't imagine this Rangers team doing that just now. If Rangers had lost that game yesterday, I can't imagine photographs appearing of this current team having pints and sitting in the sun. I just can't see it happening. And I think that tells you something about the culture. And I think it's an astute observation from you. I think McGregor and Davis, Davis has 100 caps for his country. Stephen Davis is the immaculate professional. Stephen Davis is a guy that's in a position that, Stephen Davis must be getting a fair bit of kick in his position through the years. He's played at the top level his entire career. He's either been playing for Rangers, been playing the English Premiership. And he will bring a level of just professionalism and experience to that dressing room. Plus, he knows what it takes to win a league. He's done it before. He's captained his country to the second round of European Championships. And to do that with Northern Ireland is quite something. So him and McGregor as well. McGregor will bring something else. McGregor's quite a big personality. I think Stephen Davis always struck me as being as a quieter person, someone who'll lead by example. McGregor's quite a big personality. I would suspect he's quite a big voice in the dressing room. I suspect he's somebody who who'll help people settle in quite quickly. I suspect he's a bit more like that. And I think they'll be immensely important. And I think it was an interesting point that Gerrard made last season. He talked about Andy Halliday. And he talked about Andy Halliday's importance to the club in the dressing room. I think Gerrard understands that. Gerrard understands how important that having the right mentality in there is. And I think he looks to these players to kind of sort that out. Gerrard doesn't come across as the ranter and raver. I'm sure he has his moments, but he doesn't come across as that kind of guy. He's not a guy who rants and raves on the sidelines. And I suspect he relies on the senior players to just keep getting that message across. And I suspect you're right. I suspect you're right about Defoe. Defoe, from what I gather, is somebody who's been very influential on Morelos, and on teaching him things and on improving him. I suspect he's having a similar influence on Roof. Vitally important. Vitally important.
Colin, just on that point, the game I watched, I've mentioned it already tonight, but there was highlights of the 3-2 game a few years ago, and some of the players that were playing that day, Josh Windass for one, Declan John, Greg Docherty, Jason Cummings came on. It's a different level of club and team we've got now, really. And even looking at Graham Murray in the dugout, no harm to Graham Murray. He's obviously been a good servant to the club and still is. But back then it was like we were really, really lucky to be anywhere near any sort of title run that season.
Yeah, and I think John makes a good point. Mentality is a big part of it. If you're a big player, it's a big part of what makes you a big player. You know what I mean? I can remember a thing with Souness, and I never really understood it until I wasn't a football manager, but I was a manager, in my job. And I remember Souness saying, he was talking about Ray Wilkins, saying he was getting more in the dressing room from him than he was in the park. And I always found that a strange comment. I mean, I was only like 16 or 17 at the time, and I thought, well, he's a football player. How can you be getting more in the dressing room? But when I was a manager, I had a team of young folk. They were all mostly students, and there was this one guy who wasn't the best in terms of his output, and he wasn't hitting his KPIs and all this kind of stuff. But what he did do was, on a Monday when everybody was a bit down, coming back from the weekend, he was the one that lifted the place a wee bit. So in an indirect way, he was contributing in a big way. He was the one that got everybody else going. And so at one period, I was getting a bit of stick from my manager saying, you need to deal with this person. You need to, his work's not up to scratch. And I had an argument with my manager. I says, well, he's doing things in other ways that help. I'm not defending him, and I'll try and get him up to scratch with his work. But he does something that other people don't. And I think that works in football as well, and I think the Andy Halliday example is one of those. He wasn't really, because the Rangers squad had improved so much, he was falling out of things in terms of getting game time. But Steven Gerrard obviously saw that he still contributed something in the dressing room. And it's a big part of it. And I think it's a part that a lot of supporters don't really think about. The dynamic in the dressing room and the characters in the dressing room who help shape the team and either make them winners or losers. And in 2012, when the financial collapse happened and we lost all those players, that was that whole winning mentality ripped out of the club. When you brought together, I think we came back pre-season that year and we had about 7 players on the books or something. McCoy's had to pull a squad together. None of them are getting introduced to a winning dressing room. That's gone. That's lost. You know what I mean? And it's taken a long time to get that back. And that's why Davis and McGregor, in my opinion, are so important, because they're the only links to the last dressing room that won something. And so when the guys in the current squad get their first trophy, then that's it re-established. Everyone in that dressing room knows what it takes to win a trophy. And then that gets continued. You introduce new players to that dressing room. It's a winning dressing room. You might not be a winner yet yourself, but you've got guys in that dressing room who are going to show you how to become a winner. You've got the basic skills. You've got, a good football brain, good touch, good control. You can finish or whatever position you play in, but you don't have that winning mentality. The guys in the dressing room will show you what's required. Back in 2012, we didn't have that. In 2015, we didn't have that because it was ripped out in 2012. So I think it's a part of the game that people don't pay enough attention to, and I was guilty of that. It wasn't until I became a manager myself and I had to deal with staff that I started to understand that even people who maybe on the face of it aren't contributing in the way that you think they should be contributing, but they're doing something else in the background that helps everybody else. It helps the dynamic of the team and helps the team perform. So it's something that people need to consider. And I think Andy Halliday that was one of the reasons he stayed a wee bit longer. I think Gerrard felt that he offered something in that front. He wasn't going to get a huge amount of game time towards the end, but he added something in the dressing room. So yeah, it's a big part. The mentality side is a huge part of it, I think, and we've got it now. It's there.
Just to be clear there, Colin, in that anecdote you told, were you Graham Souness?
Could possibly say.
That's not the first time you've done that.
No, I never understood what Souness said. When he was talking about Ray Wilkins, I didn't understand it until I became a manager myself.
Right, okay.
That's what I was trying to say.
No bother. Yeah, yesterday before the game, it obviously marked the 50th anniversary of the Ibrox disaster. I know you and Ross touched on that on Friday night, Colin. But John, obviously, the difficult way to market, with COVID and all that stuff, there wasn't the ability to market in the way the club had planned. But, the stuff that was put out on social media, the tributes and the documentary the club did, as well as actually Sky's coverage before the game, I thought was really poignant and actually quite emotional.
Yeah, it's something that I think it actually has had because it's the 50th year, I think it's maybe been reintroduced to a wider audience. It's obviously something that we've all been aware of and familiar with in your cases, forever. I was a very young boy when it happened. I grew up with a story that is familiar to many people, and I've heard it told in different ways. An older cousin who went to the game, who left completely oblivious, got the underground into town, met up with one of his friends, didn't come home till 9 o'clock that night to, parents in absolute agony, completely oblivious to what had gone on. It was a different time. I didn't see the BBC documentary, but I read the article that kind of accompanied it on the BBC website, which I thought was quite good. It was actually a couple of Celtic supporters from Markinch in Fife who had been friends, who'd been at school with, and friends with the 5 boys that died. And it was handled well. It was written well. It was accurate. I saw the one the club did, and with Mr. Park speaking, and again I thought it was excellent. I thought that hit the right tone, and I thought the bit that I didn't see the Sky stuff, but I saw Roddy Forsyth, who was at the game. I didn't know that Roddy Forsyth was at the game, and him talking about it on Football Focus. So everything I've seen I felt has hit the right tone. It's such a difficult topic. There are people alive today who were at that game. There are people alive today who lost friends, who lost family. It's something, and I know Colin put something out on social media through the week that, it's crept in over the last kind of 15 years or so, maybe more than that now, people making fun of it. But when I was growing up, nobody did. It was just a subject that was taboo. There wasn't much off limits in football certainly in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s. But that was, and I remember the first time I realised it was being mocked was at Aberdeen at Ibrox. And just been quite shocked that was a subject that people felt that they could try and make fun of. So I thought the club have done well. It is, a service, a full house at Glasgow Cathedral would have been quite something, and it would have been certainly a quite fitting thing. But as I say to people when maybe people who aren't Rangers supporters, when they first find out about this and they ask me about it, I say, look, the stadium is the memorial to those people. We built that stadium, the stadium that we all now recognise as Ibrox. The stadium that we visit just now, the stadium that pretty much all of us know is our stadium. It wasn't always, for a long time, our stadium was mainly terracing. and that stadium is the memorial to them. You know, the people who died that day and the people who died before it, but particularly the people who died that day. They are the reason that we have the stadium we have, and they are the reason we always must have that stadium. And that is the memorial to them. And that's a fitting memorial. You know, that the club decided that whatever else happens, that can never happen again. And if that costs us on the park, then it costs us on the park. You know, if money has to be taken, and money was diverted away and used to build up a new stadium at a time when nobody was doing that. You know, when in fact clubs were doing the opposite. You know, most clubs were not spending money on their stadiums. Rangers rebuilt Ibrox, and that is the memorial to the people who died that day, and that's a fitting memorial.
Yeah, Colin, did you manage to see some of the tributes over the past couple of days?
Yeah, I saw the one in the BBC. I thought overall it was fairly good. Given the current relationship with the BBC and Rangers, there was a wee sort of 5 minutes in it when they were kind of being quite accusing towards the club, and they done one for the 40th anniversary that didn't have that sort of content in it, and I just kind of thought, I didn't know if there was any need for that. I saw the Sky one yesterday. I was quite moved with the guy who, it was a tragic story actually, that he thought he was going to his first Old Firm game with his brother. His brother had 2 tickets, and his brother took his pal rather than him, and the two of them died. I found myself getting quite emotional watching that, because you know, that's a bit of a sliding doors moment for that guy. You know what I mean? If he'd went to that game, he would have been with his brother, and the odds are that, you know, he wouldn't have came back. So, you know, it's stories like that. You know what I mean? It's how it's became sort of fair game for, you know, being mocked and all that kind of stuff is beyond me. I suppose it is what it is, but yeah, it was touching. It was nice. A lot of the stuff that went on, and it's nice to see.
Agreed. That's sort of us running out of time. What I will touch on before we go, Gersnet's begun a new partnership with footballprizes.co.uk. There's going to be a range of prizes in the coming weeks for fans to try and get their hands on. The first was a signed and framed Steven Gerrard jersey, Rangers jersey, I should say. The uptake for that's been good so far, so keep your eyes peeled on our social media for other prizes that you could be in with a chance of winning. And of course, as always, please subscribe to the podcast. Give us a like on social media. Previous episodes of and tonight's show, are available to listen to on all the usual platforms from Monday. Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Castbox, whatever else you get your podcasts. Just for the avoidance of doubt, this is a blue tinted glass. I'm not actually drinking Blue Wicked, just in case that was going to become a thing on the social media.
It's going to be a thing.
That's going to be a thing now. So, yeah, but listen, thanks very much to Colin and John for joining me tonight. And we hope you enjoyed. Until next time, good night.